Hello and welcome back to Kevin Can't Play today on our War Thunder Docuseries. It's been a while, but let's get back into the swing of things. Been kind of sitting on this script for a little while. Today we will be covering the Russian Polikarpov I-16, which was pretty much brought Russia into the modern age in terms of aviation. And it's got some interesting stories to it, so I thought you might enjoy it. So yeah, we'll get into that real quick. As soon as I remember how to turn all this crap off. Get rid of that, get rid of that. Alright, and you might be asking, well Kevin, why am I looking at a biplane here? Well, this biplane is the I-153 M62 Chaika. It is the twin of the I-16. At the time that they were building the I-16, the Russian Air Ministry was not quite sure if the monoplane was the way to go. So Polikarpov built the I-153, which should actually be I-15-3, as it's built directly off of its predecessor, the I-15. Excuse me. The difference between the 153 and the 15 is the undercarriage. The 15 had a fixed undercarriage, and the earlier models had a completely flat wing on top here. Whereas the 153, along with the I-16, had the first retractable landing gear. So, because the ministry wasn't quite sure of it, they developed the I-153 alongside the 116. The 116, despite its misgivings, was actually better liked in the long run. Had a stronger engine, even though the 153 could outmaneuver it. The other nice thing about the 153, which kept it in service for quite a while, is its bomb capacity. Because it has the dual wings, it was able to carry more bombs than the I-16. In fact, the first incarnation of the I-16 couldn't carry any bombs at all. It also has 4 machine guns in the nose, which the I-16 started out with only the 2 for its prototype. Yeah, speaking of prototypes, let's get over to it. The I-16 Type 5. And we'll get into our script here. The Polikarpov I-16 was a Soviet fighter aircraft of revolutionary design. It was the world's first low-wing cantilever monoplane fighter with retractable landing gear to obtain operational status, and as such, introduced a new vogue in fighter design. The I-16 was introduced in the mid-1930s and formed the backbone of the Soviet Air Force at the beginning of World War II. The diminutive fighter, nicknamed the Ishak, or Donkey, by Soviet pilots. And it was named the Donkey because of its stubbornness. Not only in its sometimes difficulty to fly, but also its ability to stay in a fight way longer than expected for a plane of its size and type. So yeah, this is the Type 5. This was the prototype with a slightly weaker engine. Hence no bomb capacity, no extra machine guns. But still a good little plane, good flight characteristics. A lot better than expected. Then we'll move on to the Type 10, which was the first real main production fighter for them. And this one did have 4 machine guns. 2 in the nose up here, and then 2 in the wings. And they're all 7.62. Then we have the and the Type 10 was the first one to be able to carry bomb load. In this case, actually, this one didn't even have bombs. It could only carry rockets. In which case we have 6 anti-tank rockets, giving it some ground support capability. Then the I-16 had a lot more versatility. It could carry the same loadout of rockets, or it could carry up to 2 100-kilo bombs. Also, it kind of had this neat little roundel on the nose. But it also had the 4 7.62 guns. And the one we'll be playing with the most today is the Type 27, which has two 20mm guns. This one also does have the same bomb capacity as the Type 24. However, I haven't unlocked those yet, so we'll be stuck without them. So yeah, but yeah, that's it. And yeah, you might ask, well, why does the Type 5 have a full canopy and none of the other ones do? Well, we'll be getting into that in a minute too. But first, let's get up in the air. While working on the Polikarpov I-15 biplane, Nikolai Nikolaevich Polikarpov began designing an advanced monoplane fighter. It featured cutting-edge innovations such as retractable landing gear and a fully enclosed cockpit, and was optimized for speed with a short, stubby fuselage and a Wright R1820 radial engine in a Naka cowling. The aircraft was small, light, and simple to build, making it very popular. Full-scale work on the TSKB-12 prototype began in June of 1933, and the aircraft was accepted into full production on the 22nd of November 1933, a month before it took to the air. The TSKB-12 was of mixed construction, using a wooden monocoque fuselage, and wings employed a KHMA chrome molybdenum. I can never remember how to pronounce that word. Steel alloy wing spar, dural ribs, and a D1 aluminum alloy skinning the center and leading edges, with the remaining portions of the wings fabric covered. Another modern feature were the ailerons, which ran along most of the entire trailing edge, as you can see there. Of the wing, and also operated as flaps in the matter of more modern flaperons, by drooping 15%. The cockpit was covered by a 16-inch canopy, which featured an Aldous-type tubular gun sight, which could slide back and forth on runners, fitted with rubber bungee cords. As you can see, this model does not have that, nor does it have the scope. A 59.4 gallon fuel tank was fitted directly in front of the cockpit. The main landing gear was fully retractable by a hand crank, which apparently was a pain in the butt to get up and down. The armament consisted of a pair of 7.62 by 54 millimeter R or 30 caliber SHKS machine guns in the wings, mounted on the outboard side of the main gear, and 900 rounds of ammunition. So that was mounted right where the 20 millimeters currently are on this one. Let's not get too lost here. The TSKB-12 was designed for the Wright Cyclone SR 1820 F3 9-cylinder radial engine, rated at 710 horsepower. Licensed to build this engine under the supervision of the Shvetkov Design Bureau in the Soviet Union was being negotiated at the time. As the license was not yet approved, Polikarpov was asked to settle for the less powerful M22, which is a Soviet-built version of the Gnome-Rhone Jupiter 9 ASB, which is itself a licensed version of the Bristol Jupiter 7 or 6, with 480 horsepower, so significantly less than the 710 from the Cyclone. And speaking of Cyclone, you might see this plane might look a little familiar in its design. Well, that's because it matches quite a bit the Cyclone-powered American GB Racer. I always get BGs and GBs mixed up. Uh, but anyway, so there it is. So it kind of looks a lot like the Wright plane, or Hughes. Hughes Aviation built the GB Racer. However, this switch in engine was deemed accessible because of the projected top speed, still exceeded, words are hard, 185 miles an hour. Now let's go on attack run real quick. Don't know if we're really going to be able to do much against this tank, but we'll give it a try. No, hit it. Just don't think the 20mm quite have the punch. Yeah, I don't think they quite do. Give it one more pass. Why not? Yeah, a lot of good hits, just nothing doing. Alright. Excuse me. The M22 powered TSKB-12 first took to the air on the 30th of December 1933 with the famous Soviet test pilot Valery I'm going to butcher this, Chkalov at the controls. The second TB-12 with a Cyclone engine and three-bladed propeller flew in January of the following year. Initial government trials in February of 1934 revealed a very good maneuverability, but the aircraft did not tolerate abrupt control inputs. Here we get a little bit of view from the cockpit. The visibility was one of the main complaints. Oh, cans are out of ammo anyway. Oh man, it is loud in this cockpit. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, initial government trials in February of 1934 revealed a very good maneuverability, but the aircraft did not... Oh, I just read that. Thus, the TSKB-12 was deemed dangerous to fly, and all aerobatics were forbidden. The M22 version was preferred due to the vibration of the Cyclone-powered aircraft. Pilots commented early on about the difficulty of climbing into the cockpit, a trait that persisted throughout the I-16 service life. Before continuing on test flights, the designers had to answer the question of spin behavior. Wind tunnel testing suggested that the TSKB-12, with its short tail, would enter an unrecoverable flat spin, but real-life trials were necessary to confirm this. Since Cyclone engines were rare, it was decided to risk the M22 prototype for this purpose. On March 1st and 2nd, 1934, Chkalov performed 75 spins and discovered that the aircraft had a very benign stall behavior, dipping a wing and recovering without any input from the pilot. When the airspeed increased. And intentional spins could easily be terminated by placing the controls in the neutral position. The stories of vicious spin behavior in the I-16 perpetuated in modern literature is unfounded, perhaps extrapolated from the GB Racer experience, which did have a really nasty flat spin habit. In fact, the I-16 stablemate, which we have talked about, biplane Polikarpov I-153 exhibited much worse spin characteristics. Let's go find a bridge to dive under, shall we? That'll do. Then I think we'll switch planes to some with bombs and rockets. Oof. This one's going to be... Yeah, that one was too low. Oh well. There wasn't much clearance there. I should have gone between the spurs. Alright, well, let's go get a different plane. One with a few more bombs. Let's do rockets. We haven't done rockets. So let's see. The I-16. 524. Yeah, let's do this one. Let's switch out his bomb load real quick. Get some anti-tank rockets. Though I'm crap at rocketry. I'm much better with bombs than I am with rockets. But hey, let's try it. Yeah, test flight. Yeah. Service trials of the new fighter, designated I-16, began on the 22nd of March, 1934. The M22 prototype reached 223 miles per hour, which was fairly impressive at the time. The manually retracted landing gear was prone to jamming, and speaking of which, come on, flipping it over sometimes helps. There we go. Now we got him. Now we got him up, and required considerable strength from the pilot. Most of the test flights were performed with the gear extended. On the 1st of May 1934, the M22 prototype participated in the flyover of Red Square. Approximately 30 I-16 Type 1 aircraft were delivered, but were not assigned to any VVS fighter squadron. Most pilots who flew the I-16 Type 1 for evaluation purpose did not find the aircraft to have many redeeming characteristics. Regardless of pilot opinion, much attention was focused on the Cyclone-powered aircraft and the M25, the license-built Cyclone. On the 14th of April, 1934, the Cyclone prototype was damaged when one of the landing gear legs collapsed while it was taxiing. Alright. Let's see if we can actually nail this thing. Got it. Nice. The third prototype with the Cyclone engine incorporated a series of aerodynamic improvements and was delivered for government trials on the 7th of September 1934. The top speed, did I overfly it? No, there it is. Where was I? Yeah, not the best aiming characteristics on these guys. Ooh, a boat. And I think a bridge we can pass under. Let's give him a scare there. Or I just run right into the bridge, like an idiot. Oops. The top speed of 270 miles an hour no longer satisfied the Air Force, who now wanted the experimental Nazarov M58 engine and 290 miles an hour. Subsequently, the M22 powered version entered production. I think that's actually supposed to say 58. At oh man, Nizhny Novgorod and Factory 39 in Moscow. Because it was the fourth aircraft produced by these factories, it received the designation I-16 Type 4. Aircraft fitted with these new engines required a slightly changed airframe, including armor plating for the pilot and changes to the landing gear doors to allow for complete closure. Just realized I made a mistake earlier, and it was the Type 5 that was the first one that entered service. Aircraft fitted with these new engines required a slightly changed airframe, including armor plating for the pilot. Oh, I already read that. The M25 fitted I-16. The I-16 Type 5 featured a new engine cowling, which was slightly smaller in diameter. It featured 9 forward-facing shuttered openings, which you can see there. These ones happen to be open. Alright, instead of going under the bridge, let's try going through the bridge. I'm so out of practice. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa! That was close. Alright, we got through it, but we almost ate crap there. Yeah, that looks like a bridge that might be tall enough. The M25 was rated at 635 horsepower at sea level and 700 horsepower at 7,500 feet. Due to the poor quality of the canopy glazing, the I-16 Type 5 pilots typically left the canopy open or removed the rear portion entirely. By the time the Type 5s arrived, it was the world's lightest production fighter at 3,219 pounds. Yeah, I think we can get out of this bridge. As well as the world's fastest, able to reach speeds of 282 miles an hour at altitude and 245 miles an hour at ground level. Whew, there we go. God, I'm out of practice. It shows. Let's go give this guy a little scare, shall we? Yeah, probably made him nervous. Making me nervous. While the Type 5 could not perform the high-G maneuvers of other fighters, it possessed superior speed and climb rates, and had extremely responsive aileron control, which gave it a very good roll rate. I mean, this thing just rolls right on over. And stays straight as an arrow as it does it. It's a great little aerobatic fighter. One of the reasons why in the game that a lot of people hate it when they're going up against it and call it a so-called cheater plane is just because of its flight characteristics. It does have very good flight characteristics. It's really hard to take a good beat on them, much less outturn them. So a lot of people hate it. But it's also one of the things that makes it pretty fun to fly. And this led to precision maneuvers in loops and split S's. Evaluation from pilots confirmed the experience with prototypes. Controls were light and very sensitive. Abrupt maneuvers resulted in spins, but spin behavior was excellent. An aileron roll could be performed in just under 1.5 seconds, with a rollover rate of 240 degrees per second. The rear weight bias made the I-16 easy to handle on unprepared airfields, because the aircraft was rather unlikely to flip over the nose, even if the front wheels dug in. However, the I-16 was a difficult fighter to fly. The pilots had poor visibility, the canopy tended to become fouled with engine oil, and the moving portion was prone to slamming shut during hard maneuvers, which caused many pilots to fix it in the open position or remove it entirely, and later models just completely entirely got rid of it. It wasn't even part of the airplane. The front section of the fuselage with the engine was a little too close to the center of gravity, and the pilot's cockpit was a little too far to the rear, making visibility somewhat difficult. As you can see, it's almost entirely behind the wing, which in a biplane is okay, but in a monoplane, it limits some of the advantages of the monoplane by not having that top wing in the way. In terms of visibility, however, most of the guys flying it were originally biplane pilots and were used to it. The front section, wrote that. The Polikarpov had insufficient longitudinal stability, and it was impossible to fly the aircraft hands-off. Meaning you pretty much had to keep control of it at all times, or you were in some trouble. A total of that would also make for a very long flight mission sometimes too. A total of 7,005 single-seat and 1,639 two-seat trainer variants were produced. In terms of operational history, we're taking a momentary coffee break because my throat is dry. Said, not used to this. Oh crap, we're almost out of fuel. So let's find the airport and go land real quick. Okay, we are heading in the right direction. We're gonna find the airport. Oh, I think I see it over there. Yeah, there it is. And just so you know, we're flying over the lovely city of Stalingrad. Before it was a bombed out pile of crap. Are they down? No, they're not down. They're a long way from down. Come on, get that gear down. Like I said, the gear on these earlier ones was not the easiest to deal with. However, I can stand on these brakes and... oh well. Never mind, just lied. Should be able to stand on the brakes on this and not flip over like that, but yeah, no. Sometimes the game physics don't quite match reality. They do the best they can. Anyway, back to its history. At the start of the Spanish Civil War in 1936, Republican forces pleaded for fighter aircraft. After receiving payment in gold, Joseph Stalin dispatched around 475 I-16 Type 5s and Type 6s. The first I-16s appeared in Spanish skies in November of 1936. The Polikarpov monoplanes had their first baptism of fire on the 13th of November 1936, when 12 I-16s intercepted a nationalist bombing raid on Madrid. Soviet pilots claimed 4 air victories, and the 2 German Heinkel HE-51 pilots were killed. But the Soviets suffered losses too. The group commander collided with an enemy aircraft, and another I-16 pilot crash-landed. Polikarpovs immediately began dominating the enemy Heinkel HE-51s and Arado AR-68 biplanes, and remained unchallenged until the introduction of the Messerschmitt Bf-109. The arrival of the newest Bf-109Bs and the overwhelming numerical superiority of nationalist fighters were the primary cause of the heavy I-15 and I-16 combat losses suffered throughout 1937. A number of aviation publications called the new Soviet fighter a Boeing, due to the incorrect assumption that it was based on the Boeing P-26's design, when in fact the Polikarpov actually came first. The nationalists nicknamed the stubby fighter Rata, or Rat, while the Republicans affectionately called it the Mosca, or Fly. Combat experience showed that the I-16 had deficiencies. Several aircraft were lost after structural failure of the wings, which was quickly remedied by reinforced structures. Heavy machine gun bullets could sometimes penetrate the armored backrest and fuel tanks, occasionally caught fire despite being protected. The hot Spanish summers required addition of oil radiators, and dust adversely affected the life of the engines. Although some aircraft accumulated up to 400 hours of flying time, the average lifespan of an I-16 was only 87 days, of which 1/6 were spent on maintenance. The biggest complaint in service was the light armament of only two 7.62mm machine guns. This was urgently addressed with the Type 6, which added a third SHKAS to the bottom of the fuselage. The 4-gun Type 10 was nicknamed the Super Mosca, or simply Super. The total number of I-16s delivered to Spain from 1936 to 1938 amounted to 276. When the war ended on the 1st of April in 1939, 187 Ratas had been lost in Spain. 112 lost in combat, one shot down by enemy aircraft, anti-aircraft fire, and 11 destroyed on the ground. One force landed, and 62 lost in accidents. Over in the Far East, and the battles at Kalk and Gol, another 250 I-16 Type 10s were supplied to China. This model added a second set of 7.62mm SHKS machine guns, armor behind the pilot, and had a slightly upgraded 750 horsepower M25 engine. In 1939, of the 500 I-16s deployed to the fighting at Namonhan, approximately 112 were lost during the battles of Kalk and Gol, of which 88 were destroyed in aerial combat, primarily against the all-metal Nakajima Ki-27 Imperial Japanese Army fighters. During test trials in Russia of captured Ki-27, the aircraft proved superior to the Soviet I-15 bis, I-153, and the I-16 in aerial combat, as well as having a faster takeoff and slower landing speed, requiring shorter airstrips than the I-16, which needed 270 meters to stop and 380 meters for takeoff. Further attempts were made to upgrade the firepower of the aircraft using the 20mm SHVAK cannons, which we saw earlier, making the I-16 one of the most heavily armed fighters of the period, able to fire 28 rounds of ammunition in just 3 seconds. Pilots loved the results, but the cannons were in short supply, and only a small number of the I-16 Type 12, 17, 27, and 28 were built. The cannons adversely affected performance, with 360-degree turn time increased from 15 seconds in the Type 5 to 18 seconds. The Type 24 replaced the tail skid with the tail wheel, as you can see on this plane, and featured the much more powerful 900 horsepower Shvetsov M63 engine. The Type 29 replaced two of the SHKAS guns with a single 50 caliber UBS. Types 18, 24, 28, 27, 28 and 29 can be fitted to carry the RS-82 unguided rockets, which are the high explosive versions of this. The ones on here. I think these are BS or BRS or some combination of that. RSB. It's the anti-tank version. A 1939 government study found the I-16 had exhausted its performance potential. The addition of armor, radio, battery, and flaps during the aircraft's evolution exacerbated the rear weight distribution problems to the point where the aircraft required considerable forward pressure on the stick to maintain level flight, and at the same time developed a tendency to enter uncontrolled dives. Extension and retraction of the landing flaps caused a dramatic change in the aircraft's attitude, and accurate gunfire was still difficult, as we can demonstrate here. So that was a pretty good spread. Once we actually get closer to a sort of a ground target, you can see the gunfire tends to go everywhere. Also, I have very well trained pilots, so they can keep their groupings tight. Whereas if you're playing one of these just off the bat with brand new people, brand new crews, it can be pretty damn inaccurate. We also like to call the gunfire from these fireworks displays, because you'll see these guys spraying and praying everywhere, and because of all the tracers and incendiary rounds, it looks like a fireworks display going off. But anyway, over on the Eastern Front, the Russians nicknamed the aircraft Ishak, which is Russian for donkey, because it was also similar to the Russian pronunciation of I-16. When Operation Barbarossa erupted on the 22nd of June, 1941, 1,635 of the 4,226 VVS aircraft were I-16s of all variants, fielded by 57 fighter regiments in frontier areas. The main assault, delivered by the Luftwaffe's Luftwaffe 2 in support of Wehrmacht Army Group Center, was directed against the Soviet Western Special Military District that employed 361, 424 according to other sources, I-16s. During the early phase of the campaign, the I-16 bases were the main targets for the German aircraft, and after 48 hours of combat, of the 1,635 Polikarpov monoplanes in service on the 21st of June 1941, only 937 were left. By the 30th of June, the number of I-16s in Western Front line units had dropped to 873, including 99 that required repairs. To stem the Luftwaffe area assault, several I-16 pilots adopted the Tehran tactic and sacrificed their lives, ramming German aircraft. Its main opponent in the sky in 1941 was the German Messerschmitt Bf-109. The I-16 was slightly more maneuverable than the early Bf-109s and could fight the Messerschmitt Bf-109E, or Emil, on equal terms in terms of turns. Skilled Soviet pilots took advantage of the Polikarpov's superior horizontal maneuverability and liked it enough to resist the switch to more modern fighters. The German aircraft, however, outclassed its Soviet opponent in service ceiling, rate of climb, acceleration, and crucially, in horizontal and diving speed, due to better aerodynamics and the much more powerful engine. The main versions of the I-16 had a maximum speed of 279 to 291 miles an hour, while the Bf-109E had a maximum speed of 347 to 353 miles an hour. The more streamlined Bf-109F Friedrich could hit 372 to 390 plus miles an hour. So German pilots held the initiative and could decide if they wanted to chase their opponents. could attack them from above and behind, and then gain altitude for a new attack. Meanwhile, Polikarpovs could only defend each other by forming a defensive circle or via horizontal maneuverability. Oh crap! I ran out of fuel. Where's the airfield? All right, there it is. All right, let's get this gear down because we got started getting it down now. I always forget to check fuel while I'm down here. Gotta get some speed up too. Oh, let's trying. Let's just kill that. Yeah, I know I'm out of fuel. Hush. It's trying to restart. Those flaps are not helping me at all. Oh well, at least we had a good landing with no fuel. Could have been worse. We've had worse. You've seen worse. So give it some time to do that. Moreover, in terms of armament, Messerschmitts had a slight edge on the I-16. Well, slight edge. The ML carried 2 wing-mounted 20mm MGFF cannons and 2 synchronized 7.92mm MG17s, while the most common version of the I-16 was armed with just 2 synchronized and 2 wing-mounted 7.62 SHKSs. Finally, the ammunition storage on a Messerschmitt exceeded that of the I-16, carrying 1,000 rounds for each machine gun, plus 60 rounds for each cannon, while the Polikarpov carried just 450 rounds for each SHKS gun, which means it blew its load pretty quickly. The I-16 had a more durable engine than the liquid-cooled engines of the BF-109. Let's see how quickly it blows its load. In terms of rockets, gone. Machine guns, gone. So yeah, not very long. The I-16 did have a more durable engine than the liquid-cooled engine of the BF-109. Around half of all produced I-16s were still in service in 1943 when they were finally replaced. Specially modified I-16s were still in service in 1943. I just read that. I'm an idiot. Specially modified I-16s were used in the Zveno parasite aircraft experiments using the Tupolev TB3 as a mothership. That's a pretty interesting thing. If you get a chance to check it out, I would highly recommend doing so. It was a great idea, just I don't think Russia quite had the technology to pull it off. The Luftwaffe was known to have captured some I-16 and UTI-4 two-seat trainers and flown from the, I am so going to mess this up, Erprobungsstelle. No. Erprobungsstelle. Rechlin Central Luftwaffe Test Facility by Kampfgeschwader 200, or KG 200. The Luftwaffe was not the only air force to test its fighters against the I-16. The Japanese captured a few of the I-16s as well, and the Romanian Air Force also got one with a Soviet pilot defected. The Finnish Air Force, or the FAF, captured some I-16s along with several other Soviet types. During the Winter War and the Continuation War, the Finns captured 6 I-16s and 1 I-16 UTI. Of the 2 captured I-16s and I-16 UTIs, or two of the captured ones were put back into flying condition and flight tested. In terms of surviving aircraft, commencing in 1993, New Zealand pilot and entrepreneur Sir Tim Wallace's Alpine Fighter collection organized the restoration of 6 I-16s and 3 I-153s found in Russia to airworthy condition by the Soviet Aeronautical Research Institute, Zimnia, in Novosibirsk. Hey, I got it right that time. The flight of the first restored aircraft, I-16-9, took place in October of 1995. Once restored, the aircraft were transported by rail to Vladivostok, and from there shipped via Hong Kong to New Zealand. The project was completed in 1999 when the third and final I-153 arrived in New Zealand. In addition, a 7th I-16 was later restored for American collector Jerry Yagan. 7 others and 2 replicas are known around the world, plus 3 in the United States, which is in the opening picture and thumbnail actually shows one of the restored planes. That is actually an original I-16 that was carefully restored. I believe that's the one owned by Jerry Yagan. Pretty sure that's the American one, but I'm not exactly sure. It's been so long since I looked it up that I can't remember. But in terms of Sir Tim Wallace, man, he's a hero for all the planes he saves. It must be nice to have that kind of money. But he's restored dozens and dozens of almost lost aircraft. Between him and the Smithsonian, we'd have lost quite a bit of knowledge of these planes without their work. You know, hey, there's the tank factories of Stalingrad, the famous tank factories. They kept producing tanks even while the Germans were attacking. Tail number 2421014, an I-16 Type 24 is airworthy at the Flying Heritage Collection in Everett, Washington, which isn't actually all that far from me. I might have to go check that out sometime. 2421028, I-16 Type 24 is also airworthy at the Military Aviation Museum in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And 2421645, I-16 Type 24 is to be restored to airworthy status by Kermit Weeks at the Fantasy of Flight. And an update for Fantasy of Flight. They've been kind of having some rough financial periods lately. So if you guys get a chance, try and send them some money so that they can get their stuff up and running better. A, to help restore the aircraft, and B, to extend their hours so that they can give tours and give demonstration flights. It would really help a lot and go a long way to keeping these great planes that I'm showing you in working order. But anyway, that's about it for us today. I hope you enjoyed it. I am currently working on, and I have another script almost done. I just got to change a few things. And it should be very interesting. I think you'll like it. And it looks like since we're about out of fuel, let's go ahead and hit the silk. Alright. Again, thank you very much for joining me, and we will see you next time.